This is just going to be a very, very, well, always try to say short, but we'll see. I'm going to talk about jacking up cars. Probably just going to start with my Acura since that's going to be the closest thing to what everybody else has. It is a normal monobody with a pinch weld on the bottom, and that's kind of where a lot of people, they don't have disastrous hiccups on what happens jacking monobodies with the pinch welds. Typically, they just fold the pinch weld. It can lead to body rust because when you fold the pinch weld, the paint will crack and it can expose bare metal, which will rust a little bit quicker. It's not the worst thing in the world to do to your car, but it's still not a good thing. So just going to go through kind of very, very basic beginner stuff. Somebody in a Discord group I'm in had brought up about how they were nervous about putting their car up on jack stands. And my initial reaction was to kind of laugh, but then I thought about it for a second and I was like, that's reasonable. Back when I started working on cars, I was also pretty nervous, scared to put my car up on jack stands because it was like, it's a big, heavy thing and I'm going to be getting under it. And also, I don't want to break my car, especially nowadays. There's so many videos of people jacking up their cars and folding the rocker panels, messing up fenders, stuff like that. That's all super, super easily avoidable if someone just kind of points out, like, hey, do this, don't do that. Not every car is going to be the same, but what I'm going to be trying to show is a pretty good example of what most cars look like in terms of trying to find where you want to jack the car up. And where you're going to jack the car up may depend on what kind of work you're planning to do. I'm just going to be showing normal pinch weld lift up. I'm not a big fan of lifting by suspension bits. You can lift a car using the lower control arms. Usually pretty specific cases when you want to do that. I'm not going to jump down that rabbit hole. I'm already bad enough about going down tangents. So to start with, I kind of wanted to go over what exactly is a jack stand. These, I actually just picked these up on, oh boy. Could you not? Could you be a little quieter? Dear God. All right, so this is a pretty normal jack stand here. One of the biggest things when you're looking to buy a jack stand is all these little ratcheting bits here. You want them to be very clearly defined so that they have good engagement with the piece that's inside the jack stand that this lever engages on. So there is a bit of a tooth in there that grabs onto these ratchet points on the stand itself. And that's probably one of the most critical things when looking at your jack stands, especially if you're buying old ones, is how sharp is the definition. Like, it doesn't have to be actually sharp, but you want very, very large feet for this to lock inside. And you also want to check that tooth that's inside here. So this is to disengage to be able to push it down on the lifting part. And this would be engaged. This model, I'm pretty happy that it actually has a locking pin that can slide. There we go. They can slide through and provide better positive engagement with those locks. So the way it works is that it itself locks onto a higher ratchet tooth than what the lever mechanism does. So you actually have 2 points of contact, one that is theoretically movable via the handle, and this one can't move unless you pull it out. And it's got a little hole on there that you can put just a little safety. Come here. That you can put just a little safety pin. The safety pin doesn't need to be that big. It just needs to keep this from slipping out. That's a pretty nice feature. That's part of why, even though these are Harbor Freight jack stands, I've always been a little bit leery of getting jacks and jack stand stuff from Harbor Freight, but they've really cleaned up their game. And I'm not going to lie, what really sold me on the Harbor Freight jacks and jack stands was seeing that Donut uses the Daytona line of stuff. People who do filming on a regular basis, especially on the scale that Donut does it, if the gear is good enough for them, it's good enough for anybody that is going to be doing this, especially at a hobbyist level, which is really what all of my content is going to be designed for is hobbyist level. I would be shocked if any actual professional mechanic watched my videos for any reason except to point and laugh. And I'm 100% okay with that. The shit I do is stupid. Probably one of the biggest things is one of these pucks. You don't have to buy like an actual rubber slotted puck, but they are super cheap on Amazon. And the whole idea is that the body line meets up in a piece that sticks straight down. And you want to avoid putting the flat plate of the jack against that because it can fold over, the whole car can shift. It's just not great. So you want to have a slotted piece of something to go around that and push up. You can go as simple as a piece of 2x4 and just cut a slot in it, but you want something. I think I got 2 of these for like $8 on Amazon. So, it's not expensive to get something pre-made for what you want. So what I'm going to do is hold the puck up against the seam weld, and I'm going to slowly bring the jack up to meet it. You want to be very careful when you're doing it like this, that you keep your fingers clear of possibly getting pinched. So there we go. I've already gone ahead and made contact with that. So I'm going to go ahead and lift the car up. Now, typically, when you're lifting the car up for something, say, like an oil change, you want to get the wheels maybe about 1 or 2 inches off the ground. It kind of depends on how big you are. If you're using a creeper or if you're just going to crawl under it. Typically, I go about 1 foot, maybe 1.5 feet up. Now, I realized when I was looking at these are actually not my favorite type of saddle because there's no notch for the pinch weld. So I'm actually going to swap this for a different jack stand. These are my old hand-me-down jack stands. My old man bought these in like the 80s, but they're still good. I have no idea what brand they are. I just know that they work very, very, very well. So this one has a notch in the saddle for the pinch weld to go into. So just grabbing it from any random point on the seam weld, not great, not bad. It kind of depends on the car. My car, I can grab from any point on the seam weld, and I'm okay. I'm not going to mess anything up. Some cars, like my Ford Flex, had where the door would actually wrap all the way around. That was a real pain in the ass. Typically, what you're going to want to look for is there's going to be a little knockout. Like here, there's an actual little spot for the saddle foot to get into. There's another one down here too. So I'm going to go ahead and move my jack stand, and that'll help me from possibly putting a dent in this plastic here or breaking it, because there is an actual indent for it. For the purposes of this, I'm going to go ahead and just set it, and then I'm going to grab the jack camera and get some pictures of what I'm talking about here. Whoops, this is like the stupidest place I could have done. This is right in the middle point of the car. So the car is off the ground on this side, and I've just made a tripod so the car can bounce back and forth. I'm going to reset this and jack it up where it's supposed to be. When you're letting the jack out, you're going to want to have it come down as slow as possible, because depending on the style of jack you have and how high you're going and suspension and a lot of other variables, the car could shift laterally more than you're expecting, and it could kind of jump over on you. So slow and steady 100% wins the race when jacking and lowering your car. Okay, so take two. We're going to actually jack this up where I should have jacked up to begin with. Now, you don't necessarily, there's not like a specific right place to do your initial lift from. The middle is not the best, but you know, for right now, the whole idea of doing jacks and then switching to jack stands is that the jack is just doing the first part of the work of just lifting the car. The jack stand is where the car is going to be resting for the hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, 1 week, 1 month that the car is going to be up in the air. I've never done a 1 month. I've had the car up in the air for, I think it was about a week and a half when I did exhaust. Oh, I left stuff on the roof. Whoops. So the one thing with jack stands is you're not always going to be able to exactly lock them down where you jack the car up to. Just because the jack stand only has so many places where it can lock into. So you see how the seam, and you never want to put your finger between the jack stand and the car. It's incredibly rare for jacks to fail, especially if it's new and modern, but it can happen. And, you know, this is a small car. It's heavy as hell. If I put my finger in between there and the jack fails, my finger's gone. Well, at least the part that's in there. But either way, so for the saddle, the way it's cut out here, you want the frame seam where it's pinch welded together here. You want that to sit in there. You can see there's a little chip taken out of this. There we go. There's a little chip already taken out of this. So somebody jacked this up with just the bare metal jack, and that piece of metal just snapped out. And you can see where it's rusting much quicker there than anywhere else. It looks like I scraped the paint at some point here. Possibly me. Could have been at a mechanic because that's bare metal. It hasn't started to oxidize at all. So I need to throw some paint on that before that becomes an issue. So this would be the factory jack point. You can see where there's a large metal plate, the plastic cuts away. There's a lot of places where there's just going to be a lot of support points. So when someone says only jack your car up at a factory jack point, for my car, this is the front driver's side factory jack point. It's not going to look the same on every car. It can vary. It definitely varies from brand to brand, and it can vary from year to year, even on the same car or different cars of the same manufacturer. Some of them, it'll be a very small jack point. Some of them, it'll be a little bit bigger. This is a pretty big one on this car. And slowly lower the car down. It is infinitely better for you to put a hole in the floor plan of your car than it is to lose like body pieces. You know, you don't want to lose a finger. You definitely don't want to lose a hand. You definitely don't want to lose an entire arm or leg. So, you know, jacking up a car and putting it on jack stands is really a pretty simple thing. There's no reason to be scared of it for sure. Just respect it. Respect gravity. Respect mass. Try to be aware of that. Try to always keep in your mind that this is a big, heavy chunk of metal, and it doesn't care if you're in the way of it getting back on the ground. But, you know, as long as you kind of keep that in mind, have respect for what you're doing, pay attention, never, ever, ever rush jacking up a car. There is nothing in your life that you need to rush jacking a car that's worth your future and like your future happiness, missing body parts, or your life. Just, you know, stay safe. Keep your mind on what you're doing. And that's going to do it for this.